Hello, good afternoon on this lovely September 11th, Memorial Day, remembering our nation coming together. And we're going to do Stories Come Alive today, reading from the D. Gary Young book. And I'm excited. I'm Pamela Hunter, for those of you that may not know me, and I've been using essential oils for 15 years. Welcome to all you oil lovers, because this is for anybody and everybody that's using essential oils. And with this, we're going to tell you Monday by Monday at noon on Facebook Live, we're going to share with you the D. Gary Young book, the D. Gary Young story. And it's really a story about essential oils coming alive and in our world of today and being available to us. So this is an amazing book, and it's really about our seed to seal process. Our seed to seal process with Young Living Essential Oils as our company. So if you can't get on live, these are all recorded and going to be posted, and so have some fun with us. But I'm basically going to read to you today. Hi, Victoria. So with that, I'm going to show you the picture here as I read for you. So how could Gary have understood the significance of these words spoken by Mr. Henry Viaud? The Frenchman was speaking about his beloved lavender essential oil, but when he said this, lavender was plentiful. That was in 1991, when Gary was studying distillation with Mr. Viaud, who at the time was considered the father of distillation in Provence, France. The lavender capital of the world, Provence, France. Tucked away on a top of his mountain, Mr. Viaud, a retired professor of mathematics and physics at University of Toulouse, France, was known to have distilled everything, even rocks, in his life's work to explore all avenues of distillation for the advancements of understanding the process for the best extraction of essential oils known to man. What did Mr. Viaud feel or sense about the future of what was so precious to him? Did he know that there would be a scarcity of oils with a demand that could not be met? Did he know that essential oils would become so popular that because the demand could not be met, they would be adulterated and made synthetically to eventually be used in everything from food colorings to cosmetics and even soaps? A far cry from their amazing and intended benefits. Yes, people, there's oils everywhere right now, and they're not real. They've been made synthetically. Scent is the next secondhand smoke. You know that from going through the grocery aisles and smelling. When you take that smell in, you smell the nose hairs and your nose start to just go, ah! They tell you. But when you open up one of our essential oils, and that's what we're going to be learning about, when you use the inhalation method to take it into the olfactory and feel it through the nose, it feels lovely, it feels calming, it feels soothing, it's comforting. Oh, so nice. So I'm going to keep reading. Sadly, families that had been distilling for centuries are closing down their distilleries. They are being dismantled, and the property is being sold as real estate for housing, restaurants, and other business ventures. Some of the land is also being sold for commercial use, while other crops are being taken out and replaced with quicker cash crops such as hemp, soy, and canola. The young people are heading to the cities for the technical life, while pure oils are being endangered by growers and distillers willing to cut corners for profit. Not Young Living. But how did Gary Young, a farm boy from the mountains of Idaho, come to be in France studying distillation with the famous Henry Viaud? Why was he driven to learn everything he could about essential oils, how they were produced, and their benefits to mankind? The story goes back to perhaps another lifetime in comparison, back to the mountains where Gary grew up in his immigration to Canada, and his dreams to forge a life out of the wilderness. He could never have foreseen the change that would come into his life that would take him down a strange and unfamiliar path. a path that would change millions of lives for the better. His destiny. And you know, I was just smelling the oil, My Destiny. And you know, I didn't even read ahead to know that. It was just here. This is a God moment, that our oils lead us right to where we're supposed to be. And part of my destiny is spreading this message as well. So his destiny, for D. Gary Young, the world became his destiny, his teacher, his classroom, his encyclopedia, his destination, his life. Yes, his life revolved around discovering how to heal his broken body, riddled with pain, which would lead him into the annals of history and an ancient world shrouded in the mysteries of essential oils that had been lost to the modern land. So I'm going to show you the next pictures going on. I love that you're doing that. Me too, Liz. So bear with me as we figure out how this works best. But here are the beautiful pictures in this book. So, you know, I'm reading to you, but I hope you order this book. It's on lifesciencepublishers.com, and it looks like this. And here are the pages. I'm going to read about these pictures right now. So I'll bring him up a little closer. This is Gary is in front of his maternal grandfather. Nancy, Gary's older sister who moved to Canada with him for a short time, is to the left. And Nancy is in Young Living as well. Many of us know her as a Young Living Diamond Leader. And then there's the lower picture is the Donald N. Young family in 1963. So can you see Gary in the red shirt right here? That's Gary. Looking like a nice family. At the age 14, Gary tracked and shot this cougar, which had been killing their sheep for over 2 months. Beautiful. Switching over, can you see that? Gary grew up in a 16 by 20 foot cabin with a dirt roof until age 4. Then his father built a 30 by 30 foot 4-room cabin where he lived with his parents and 5 siblings until he was 17 years old. Are you seeing it? They lived 12 miles from town and had no electricity or running water. Electricity finally came when he was 16 years old, as well as their first hand-crank phone that was routed through the Forest Service line that connected to the lookout and ranger station for fire patrol. In the bottom corner, that's Gary's father in front of the first dirt roof, 16 by 20 foot cabin where Gary lived until age 4. During the summer of 1967, Gary logged over 2,500 miles in the saddle in the Idaho wilderness, patrolling for fires, clearing trails, and packing supplies to the lookout post. And then life on the ranch in 1955. So Gary had quite an upbringing, right? Quite a knowledge going on. We're going to keep going with some great pics here. As a young boy, I dreamed of going to Canada and homesteading a ranch on the Canadian frontier. In 1967, when I was 18, my dream came true when I loaded my truck and my horse and moved to British Columbia. In 1968, I got in on the last Homestead Act in the Caribou District with 320 acres, 30 miles in the wilderness, where I began building my horse ranch and logging business. Little did I know that here in the wilds of Canada, the destiny that awaited me would change my life forever. In September 1967, at age 18, Gary packed his red Mustang and drove to Canada for the first time. A few weeks later, he returned to get his truck, his horse, and the rest of his belongings, intent on living his dream. The original 16 by 20 foot cabin that Gary built on the property he homesteaded 30 miles outside of Quesnel, BC, 1968. Wow. I love history of people. Gary's logging business flourished. Learning to walk, I'm going to come back to that. All right, so are you ready to hear the story? This is the story, okay? Destiny speaks, a terrible accident. At age 24 of age, on February 8th, 1973, Gary suffered a severe very severe logging accident when a cut tree sheared off and hit him in the head, resulting in 3 open skull fractures, a ruptured spinal cord in 3 places that was classified as an incomplete break, 11 ruptured discs, 16 broken and or crushed vertebra, a broken pelvis, the right scapula broken in 9 pieces, a severed bronchial plexus, and 19 broken bones, which included all of his ribs on the right side and several on the left side. Are you feeling this? Like, I'm feeling this right now. Suffering with intense pain with the use of only his left arm. He was confined to a wheelchair with a medical prognosis that he would never walk again. His life was one of 13 drugs, including morphine and an antidepressant, and a world that seemed dark and hopeless with no light at the end of any tunnel. Was that a God moment that it just went dark on my computer when I said that? That was kind of cool. After 2 failed attempts at suicide, he sunk into an even deeper state of depression. He had no insurance and slowly lost everything. His logging equipment, his ranch, and his livestock. His wife took the children and left him, unable to cope with his current condition and the burden of the future. Now I have to stop right here and just do a segment that I am so honored and blessed to have sat personally with Gary Young and heard more intricate details than is written in this book. And I know this story to be true. So I know this from the man's mouth, and I know this from his heart. And so I share the written word that him and Mary Young wrote together, because it's powerful to know where your oils come from. In his 3rd attempt, he decided to fast himself to death. It was the only way out. No one could rescue him or force him to eat. But after 253 days of only drinking water and a lemon juice, the most unexpected happened. He felt movement in his right toe. The doctors explained it as one of those unexpected medical phenomenon. They suspected that because of his fasting, his body did not get the needed nutrients necessary to manufacture scar tissue, enabling some nerve endings to reroute and reconnect, which was the beginning of many years of intense pain in his struggle to walk again. He reconciled himself to living in misery and hopelessness and to finding a new path of life where he could survive. Because he couldn't go back to logging and farming, his mind began to expand as he started exploring different avenues of healing and the world of books. He stopped all his medications to clear his mind and began experimenting with different modalities and many avenues of study. Attending a community college, going to massage school, running his own health food store, and growing to his knowledge of herbs and natural healing, his amazing road to recovery brought attention from many people wanting help. Right? We are attracted to people that go through a story themselves, right? So here's this picture of him, and that says, learning to walk again, a rare photo since Gary refused to have a picture taken of him in a wheelchair or using crutches or a walker. It's interesting, right? How we don't want to live in that. We don't want to stay in the past. Gary's emotional recovery was dramatic. Told in his own words, his story gives us a slight glimpse into his life at that time and in a tremendous insight into his anguish, deep pain, and determination. So here it goes. The lowest ebb in my life, this is Gary speaking. The lowest ebb in my life was when I tried to commit suicide and failed not once but 3 times. I had no place to retreat and to when I realized I couldn't even die. Never before had I felt so disconnected from God, my family, and the world. I felt so rejected and was sure that God hated me because he wouldn't even let me die. I had nowhere to turn. This is Gary Young speaking. Had it not been for my father, who came to my hospital room and shaking his finger at me, told me to grow up, quit feeling sorry for myself, accept the hand I had been dealt, and figure out a way to get on with my life, I might have continued to wallow in self-pity, depression, and eventually succeed in ending my life. But my father knew my temperament, and he pushed the right buttons called tough love. I'm a tough love person. Do you need your finger pointed at you? Do you need my finger pointed at you? Anyway, side note. This is Gary still. After speaking those words in a tone of disgust and anger, he turned and walked out and never came to visit me again. He made me so angry as he walked down the hall, never looking back, while I was bawling and crying out to him. That's easy for you to say. You don't know what it's like to be paralyzed and in constant pain and no drugs that help. If it's the last thing I do, I will get out of this bed and I will walk and ride my horse again. Gary still speaks. When I finally got out of the hospital to go home for a weekend, I discovered that my family was on welfare, which sent me into deeper depression, and I cried. No, I will not be on welfare. Take it back. My wife asked me what she should do. The ranch was gone. The horses, and cows are gone. The logging equipment was gone, and there was no money. Alone, I cried for hours, and no one came to sympathize with or console me. When there were no more tears to run down my face, I started to think about what I could do. I asked my mother if my paint box and canvases were still in the storage, and if she could get them for me. Perhaps I could earn a living by painting. At least one arm worked. I started that night, and by the end of the next day, I had painted a beautiful, scenic picture of the mountains. Unable to work, Gary sold his paintings on a street corner in town on the weekends to earn money after having lost everything because of his accident. There's the picture of his first painting. Amazing, right? Finding all your creativity inside, finding your true essence. Everyone loved it and expressed their feelings of support. I continued to paint and catch rides on weekends down to the strip mall parking lot where I could sit and sell my paintings. Soon, I was getting jobs to paint murals in lawyers' and doctors' offices and homes. But in a small town, there was not enough business to support me as an artist for very long, and so the jobs became fewer and fewer. One night, while reading the paper, I saw a job listing for a truck driver to haul chips. A friend drove me to the mill office, but when I told the owner what I wanted, he laughed and asked me how I was going to drive a truck in a wheelchair. I'm going to pause right here and tell you I've heard this story firsthand. It's pretty amazing. Here we go. We're going to keep going. I told him that if he equipped the truck with hand controls, I could drive it. With a dubious look, he pointed to a Mac Day cab tractor in the yard and told me that if I could drive it over to a semi-chip trailer, hook it up, and drive it back to the office, we could talk about a job. I wheeled my chair through the gravel yard to the truck, pulled myself up on the step, pulled my chair up beside me, and shoved it behind the cab. I got in the seat and started the truck. And once the air pressure was up, I released the brakes, turned the truck off, put it in gear, and started it again. How many people do you know that would know how to do that? I pulled around in front of the trailer, turned the motor off, put it in reverse, started it again, backing under the trailer. When it locked on the pull pin, I set the brakes and turned off the motor at the same time. I slid out onto the step, lowered my chair to the ground, and then slid along the frame so that I could hook up the air hose and power cord. Then I slid back to my chair and wheeled myself to the landing gear handle, cranked it up, wheeled it back to the step, and got back in the truck. I started the engine, built the air for the trailer, released the trailer brakes, and turned the engine off. Putting it in the lowest gear, I started the engine again, coasted down to the office door, shut it off, set the brakes, and got out over the step into my chair. It took me almost an hour with climbing up and down and pulling my chair up and down. As I started to wheel myself to the owner's office, he came out to meet me with tears in his eyes and told me I had a job. On my first trip, when I backed the trailer up to the unloading ramp, I was concerned that the foreman would get upset with me for taking so much time to unhook, dump, and rehook my trailer, making the other trailers wait. I moved as fast as I could, sliding out, lowering my chair, and grabbing the rod that I had made so that I could reach under the trailer to hook the fifth wheel, release lever, and trip it. I noticed him watching me and thought that my job might not last. I wheeled back and started to crank the landing gear down when he came out of the control tower and down the steps. To my surprise, he told me to get back in my truck and said he would take care of hooking and unhooking me whenever I came. It was amazing how a feeling of wholeness started to come over me now that I was working again. So here's a picture of that truck. Gary began to make a living in a logging industry by driving a truck retrofitted with a hand clutch and brakes. And then here's a picture of his spine. May 29th, 2013, an MRI of Gary's spine taken 40 years after the terrible accident left him with unending pain that he blocks from his mind to accomplish all that he does in his life. Note the hole in the top of the vertebra and the hairline crack in almost all of his vertebrae that were either broken, chipped, crushed, or disfigured from the various accidents and activities throughout the last 40 years. That he walks today is a miracle that defies his medical prognosis. So can you see that? You're actually going to have to buy the book to have on your coffee table, in your office, in your possession, by your bedside, to actually see all the nitty-gritty of how cool this information is to have at our fingertips and how wonderful his process has been. So that's the end of today's Story Comes Alive. I hope that it holds you hanging, that you want to hear more. All right? So I love sharing the stories of Young Living, and I love that Mary Young and Gary Young have put this book together so that we actually know the truth, and that the stories have been passed along, but we know how the telephone exercise works, and some things get taken out of context and get shifted around, and reading it word for word from their words, knowing it from them, is such a powerful gift. So come see me again Mondays at noon. If I don't show up, it means I can't get internet or something like that, but Mondays at noon, I'm going to help let this story come alive and tell you tidbits from it and read it aloud to you so that you know how important it is to have this book in your possession. Okay? You can buy this at lifesciencepublishers.com. It's a great book to have. It's a great gift to give. I do say that because I don't want to take the place of you having this in your possession. I just want to bring it alive for you so that you want to own it yourself and that you want to continue knowing the story of Young Living and the story of why our oils, we are the world leader, and why Young Living oils are different. You're going to have to show up and go through the journey of my destiny.